A Chow's life cycle is centered around evolution, and typically involves hatching, evolving into the adult stage, and finally dying or reincarnating when it comes of age, which is roughly 5 to 6 Chao years. But here, we're going to focus on what happens between the blue cocoon and that pink or grey cocoon. The evolution type your Chao starts off at the very beginning of its adulthood is known as the first evolution. Later on in your Chow's life, they will undergo yet another change depending on how you've raised your Chow's stats. This type of transformation does not involve cocoon and tends to be less noticeable in comparison to the first evolution. This kind of gradual change is known as the second evolution. So what exactly is second evolution? Well, the dictionary definition of second evolution is this: the gradual change of the Chow's appearance occurring throughout the adult stage, which alters depending on stat influence, which we will cover later in detail. And it is the secondary stat your Chow specializes in, well, visually speaking. When does second evolution occur? Technically, it starts by the very moment the Chow emerges from the blue cocoon and enters the adult stage. But the changes aren't visible until the Chow's at a more advanced age. Now, some say second evolution begins when the Chow reaches the age of 3, or when the Chow undergoes its natural mating season. Both of these aren't the most accurate measures, since it can be very different for every Chow. The best way to know that your Chow is well into second evolution is to check for changes, such as wing shape and colour, emote ball, body shape, etc. etc. Some changes are more obvious than others depending on what your type of Chow is and what second evolution type it is becoming. Now, you may be waiting forever to see any noticeable change in your Chow. There is an answer to this. Fruits do not necessarily make your Chow's lifespan longer or shorter, but they will make a difference in terms of how quickly evolution will appear. Giving a lot of fruits to a baby Chow will make them evolve sooner, but it will also at the same time extend their adult life. So essentially, this really only affects the distribution and how long the Chow is living as a child and how long it's living as an adult. To know exactly how much stamina and how much time your Chow really needs to be fully fledged in their second evolution, I use this simple rule. Age 3, stamina level 30. If your Chow has 30 levels of stamina around the age of 3, I tend to find that the second evolution is at its maximise stage, or at least it's very close to. Now later in this video there's going to be a lot of information to take in. But don't worry, here's an intermission! Now, I'm probably going to use the term stat influence a lot here, and it is pretty much how much a Chow is influenced to become a certain type. And it's the evolution pathway that your Chow is essentially heading towards. Stat influence increases by physically giving animals or chaos drives to a Chow. So for example, giving rabbits will increase the stat influence for the run stat. A gorilla gives influence towards the power stat. A purple chaos drive will give influence towards the fly stat, and so on. The absence of any influence of the 4 stats, run, power, fly, and swim, will result in the influence of the none type. For example, hero none, none, dark none, none, neutral none, and neutral none, none. That's a lot of nuns. A word of warning though. Stat levels, points, and stat grades do not equal stat influence. Understand that. Just because a Chow's fly stat is the highest in terms of points and levels in comparison to its other stats, this will not mean it will always become a fly type. No matter how high one particular stat is, will not guarantee that the Chow will evolve into that particular type. I hope I make that clear. Now, regarding the animals from the black, orange, and blue group, all these animals do not specialize in raising one particular stat. More importantly, they will give stat influence randomly towards any stat. I still sound robotic for some reason when I do this. I don't know. these animals are not reliable if you want to make a certain type of chow. So for example, it is not a good idea if you want to make a run type using only skeleton dogs. You'd be much better off using the green group animals, such as rabbits and cheetahs and boars. But now that's out of the way, how do we get the second evolution that we desire? And here are a few simple rules to remember. Swim cancels out fly, and vice versa. Run cancels out power, and vice versa. This is because swim and fly work on the same variable, as well as run and power working on their own variable. It's kind of hard to explain, so thanks to my terrible Photoshop skills, I made a diagram which hopefully makes more sense. And when the Chao are born, their influence is at none, in the middle, by default. Also, when a Chao evolves into an adult, this influence also defaults back to none. The type of items given to Chao will increase the influence to the corresponding stat. Giving purple chaos drives and purple group animals will make the marker move towards the purple/fly end of the diagram. Yellow chaos drives and yellow group animals bring the marker towards the yellow/swim section. Green drives and green group animals make it move towards the green/run section. And red drives and red group animals move the influence in the direction of the red/power section. So how much needs to be given? Assuming your Chao hasn't been given any items before since it evolved or since it hatched, it will take about 40 chaos drives of one colour or 20 animals of the same colour group to maximise any one of the 4 stats. However, you won't know for sure if your Chao stat influence really is smack dab in the middle of the none section, especially if you've been giving bunches of animals and chaos drives of all kinds willy-nilly just to raise up the stat levels. In these cases, maximising influence in any one stat may require up to 80 chaos drives of one colour or 40 animals from one group. So to get the second evolution you want, you need to balance out the stat influence. To balance out the swim-fly variable, you need to give 80 chaos drives or 40 animals that influence swim, then give 40 chaos drives or 20 animals that influence fly. Alternatively, you can just give 80 chaos drives or 40 animals that influence fly, then give 40 chaos drives or 20 animals that influence swim. In order to balance out the run/power variable, you need to give 80 chaos drives or 40 animals that influence power, and then give 40 chaos drives or 20 animals that influence run. Again, you can also just give 80 chaos drives or 40 animals that influence run, then give 40 chaos drives or 20 animals that influence power. Mentioning all these numbers may be a little bit confusing, but examples will be provided later in this video. I just hope all this information hasn't killed anyone's brain cells yet. Change your mind and want to make your Chao into a different second evolution? It's possible. You can change easily between fly and swim second evolutions. Given how they both cancel out each other, you may notice that the Chao here becomes a none type after it's given 40 chaos drives. The same applies for changing between run and power, as they too work on opposite ends of the same variable. Also notice that the Chao is at the none second evolution type after 20 animals. However, what if you have, say, a hero run type, but you want to make it into a hero run swim or hero run fly? You'll still need to balance out the influence, because even if you give thousands and thousands of yellow or purple chaos drives, the Chao won't look like a hero run fly or hero run swim because it still has influence from its run stat. The answer to the problem is this: remove the run stat influence by giving power. Again, the same principle applies if you happen to have a neutral swim fly and wish to make it into a neutral swim power, also known as a sumo Chao. Give your Chao about 20 swim animals or 40 yellow chaos drives to neutralize the fly. Then, give heaps of red drives and or red group animals to get your desired sumo Chao. You may have noticed from the hero run fly example, a Chao can be stuck between two second evolutions. Stat influence can move to all four corners of the diagram, between run and swim, run and fly, power and swim, and power and fly. With this in mind, Chao cannot be stuck between fly and swim, nor between run and power, since they work on the same variable. Chao who are fully into their second evolution, but are stuck into any of these corners, are said to be hybrid evolutions, or dual second evolutions, as they take the characteristics of two different second evolutions. Now, let's shift our focus towards the first evolution. Have you ever had a Chao evolve into a swim type while you wanted something completely different? Just as second evolution can have stat influence maximized in two different stats, the same can also happen prior to first evolution. The general rule is that the Chao will evolve into the stat with the most influence. But what happens if two stats have maximum influence? Then, something known as stat dominance comes into play. Swim is most dominant, next dominant is power and run, and fly is the least dominant. This means that a maximized stat influence in swim and power, or swim and run, will result in your Chao becoming a swim type. Given that the fly stat is recessive, if fly and power, or fly and run are maximized, then power or run is chosen over fly. Chances are you've raised the swim stat just enough so the Chao can swim and be less of a nuisance instead of drowning all the time. However, at the same time you've given power or run as you want the Chao to become a power or run type, of course, but you may have given just enough swim to maximize its influence, causing it to become a swim type. If this happens, reset your console and balance the swim out with some fly animals or purple drives before it goes into that blue cocoon.